network issues. I now call this to order, the Planning Commission meeting of December 12th, 2018. Secretary Becker, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Salome? Commissioner Ikezi?
Present.
Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner Williams?
Here.
Chair Jane?
Here.
And Secretary Becker here.
Okay, everyone is here. So please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All please remain standing while we read the statement of values.
As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interest of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Okay. Public hearings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the commission directs all activity during hearings. All comments shall be addressed to the commission. Any item on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent hearing. Applicants will be allotted up to 10 minutes to present and justify proposals. Following staff presentation of the item, other speakers will be given up to 4 minutes. The applicant is allotted up to 5 minutes for rebuttal of comments. No additional comments will be accepted upon the close of public hearing, although the commission reserves the right to direct questions to any speaker on any matter. Special procedures, time limits may be applied to any items as prescribed by the chair. Appeal of commission actions must be filed in writing within 7 calendar days. Copies of the current agenda and staff reports for each item are available from the Planning Commission office on the Friday afternoon preceding the meeting and available online. A copy of the agenda packet is located on the table at the entrance. Are there any requests, applicants, the public? Are there any requests by applicants, the public, or the commission for a continuance or exception for any of the items on tonight's agenda? None? Okay, Secretary Becker, will you read the, okay, sorry. We have the consent calendar now. The procedure for the consent calendar is as follows. Consent calendar items may be enacted, approved, or adopted by one motion unless requested to be removed by anyone for discussion or explanation. If any member of the architectural committee, staff, the applicant, or a member of the public wishes to comment on a consent calendar item or would like the item to be heard on the regular agenda, please notify planning staff or request this action at the Planning Commission meeting during the consent calendar review, which is now. Items listed on the consent calendar with associated file numbers constitute public hearing items. Secretary Becker, will you please read the consent calendar for the record?
Yes, we have, Chair Jane, we have items 1A, which is the Planning Commission minutes of November 28, 2018. We have item 1B, the 12-month review of a use permit for the one-site sale of a consumption of beer and wine for a restaurant within Nob Hill Foods at 355 Monroe Street. Then we have 1C, 12-month review of a use permit for the one-site sale and consumption of beer and wine for a corporate cafe, the West Commons Cafe, located at 2515 Augustine Drive. We have 1D, the action on use permit to allow a second drive-through lane for an existing fast food restaurant at 3509 Homestead Road. And also we have 1E, which is action on variance from parking requirement for the property at 417 Maria Street.
Okay, would anyone like to remove anything from the consent calendar? I would like to remove item 1D.
Motion to approve the remaining items.
Chair Jane, I just have a comment. I noticed that Commissioner Williams wasn't at the November 28th meeting, so I'd ask that he abstain from voting on the meeting minutes of November 28th. Thank you.
Is there a second to approve the balance of the consent calendar? Okay, moved by Commissioner Casey, seconded by Commissioner Kelly. All right, I guess we're going to do a voice vote on this.
Yes.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Good. I pulled item 1D, yeah. Would you like to hear my comments on 1D?
Yes.
This is the McDonald's on Homestead. I was pleased to see that there are bicycle parking added to this project. My question was that I noticed that there's 3 trees being added at the backside of the restaurant property, but none on the front side on Homestead itself. And Homestead is pretty blighted, I'd say. And I was wondering if there was any consideration for a canopy tree in front of the restaurant. Were there utility issues, or I'm trying to understand?
Yeah, normally, when we are considering the street trees, it depends on what type of sidewalk is there. And because of the existing sidewalk, it's called a monolithic, so it's not like there's a planter strip in front of that. Essentially, there's no additional space available to put a street tree abutting the face of curb. So it'd have to go behind the sidewalk and essentially act in that manner. So it may be on private property, but maybe function.
It seemed like there was an appropriate location to put it there. There's a big grassy strip right on the other side of the sidewalk. And it seems like the applicant is here, so I might as well ask him the question.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners and staff. I'm Jim Shively with Stantec Architecture. We've been working with Yen quite a bit on the project, and yes, we are providing the 2 trees out front on the street frontage. What we had proposed was to match the trees across the street. However, I got a call from Yen yesterday saying that he wants to work with us on another species that would be there. We have absolutely no problem with that.
I didn't see that in the packet. I only saw the 3 trees in the back.
I've got an exhibit here if you'd like to see it.
On the site plan, it actually indicates 2 magnolia trees, and I think that's why Yan had indicated we'd like to select a different variety, but they are on, so they're not considered, quote, street trees, but they would function essentially as a shade tree along the street frontage.
Yeah, the magnolia trees, I see 2 issues with them. First is they drop those big cones that people trip on. And then the second is that they're not really tall canopy trees, you know, on the order of 50 feet. So I was
Yeah,
wondering.
we did have a number of utility easements in there, and we came up with location for 2 of them. The size can change. We've got enough root on it, and we can also add a root barrier to the
Yeah.
design.
I think the conditions call for root barriers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I don't know if that's a condition that it seems like the applicant is already proposing that, but I did not see that in the drawings or the plans that I saw in the front. I saw only the 3 trees in the back. So is that, seems like you're proposing that anyway, so.
I have an exhibit I can provide tonight. Yen had a copy of it.
It is shown on the site plan, but you can make it a condition just so it's formalized that we provide canopy street trees along the frontage, and then we can work out the variety with the city arborist.
I would like to do so, yeah. Okay, yes, I can make the motion. I'm sorry. There is a resolution for this. Okay, I propose a resolution of the Planning Commission approving the amendment of a conditional use permit to allow a second drive-through lane for restaurant at 3509 Homestead Road, Santa Clara, with the provision that 2 canopy trees be provided on the frontage.
Second.
Made by me, seconded by Commissioner Kelly. We voting by, I guess those of you who have computers, you can see.
Do you want to
the
invite
voting
some
thing.
conversation first?
What's that? Oh,
Yeah, I wanted to advocate for the for the McDonald's itself, in the sense that if you look at the actual McDonald's, the signage is very low. So if we're going to propose that they add 2 trees, we should allow them to have high trees or low trees, but not require them to have trees that block visibility of the signage.
I agree with that, yeah. But the applicant will work with the arborist or the city on selecting a tree. I think we already determined that. So I am not sure exactly how to proceed here because I don't see voting computer. We'll have to do a voice, yeah. I only see the speakers here.
Or just a voice vote? Yeah, either way, voice or hands.
Okay,
So
all in
of
favor?
the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously.
Then just for the audience, the consent items that were approved by the Planning Commission are a final motion, our final action, and unless there's an appeal within 7 days to the city clerk's office, and that's filed in the planning department, these actions would be final upon that 7-day period.
Okay, I think now we are on, I'm sorry. Public presentations. Would any member of the public like to speak on an item or topic that is not on the agenda? Seeing none. We can move to public hearing items. Okay, Secretary Becker, could you read the item, please?
Yes, the item is item 1A, public hearing on action on a rezone for the development of 3 single-family dwellings located at 1444 Madison Street and 1411 Lewis Street.
Okay, staff, could you provide your presentation?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, Planning Commissions. Steve Lee, project planner for this project at 1444 Madison Street. The proposal before you is a request to rezone the plan, to plan development and subdivide the one parcel into 3 parcels to support the 3 single-family dwelling units project. The parcels, structures sitting on this parcel is, we have 2 primary structure. One is a duplex that has the 1444 Madison, and then there's a two-story single-family dwelling unit on the corner of Lewis and Madison that has the address of 1411 Lewis Street. But for the purpose of this project, sorry, it's back here, we use 1444 Madison for the project's address. Okay, the PowerPoint is back on. So the surrounding, well, let's just look at the color-coded building there. There's one all the way to the bottom, kind of blue, is the single-family dwelling unit, 2 stories. The structure in the middle is a detached garage, and then the red one above is the duplex. That's 1411 Lewis. There's a multifamily residentials to the north, bordering El Camino Real. Multifamily residentials to the west, an apartment, and then single families to the north, south and east. The proposal would demolish all structures on site. Okay, just some photos. Gonna go through them real quick. This is the single family. This is the detached garage, and that's the duplex there. So the site plan, again, subdividing into 3 parcels, building the 3 single-family dwelling units. Madison there is on the south, but is running north and south. The entrances for Unit 2 and Unit 3 to the right has entrances from Madison, and Lewis has entrance on the south side on Lewis. I'm sorry, the Unit 1 has entrance from the Lewis Street, with 3 detached garages being built to the rear. Okay, some renderings, going through real quick. The architect is here. They can talk more about the architectural features and design. This is Unit 1, the one on the corner of Lewis and Madison. Unit 2 and Unit 3. All of these are 2 stories, compatible with others, 1, 2 stories, single-family homes in the surrounding neighborhood. It's project is conforming to the general plan at a 9.9 dwelling units per acre density. Where the designated land use is very low density residential, which has a range of 1 to 10. It's also compatible with the neighborhood based on the 1 to 2, this is 2-story proposal. Okay. Just past outreach meetings, there was early determinations to consider for the full demolitions of all the structures on site. That first had an outreach meeting on March 5th, getting community feedback, and then went to historical landmark commissions because the single-family dwelling on Lewis and Madison at the corner there has potential by the age to be eligible for historical listing. So, at the end, City Council on May 29th decided that it is not eligible, and so okay the project to move forward with full demolitions on the site. So the applicant came in and submitted the formal applications and did another outreach meeting to present the proposal in more detail. At the October 4th, Historical Landmark Commission reviewed it and find that it is compatible with the neighborhood. This was the some of the historical survey was provided, and some of the findings were that it lacks the site lacks the architectural integrities and significant historical association with the value of the historical resource, and it lacks also the associations with heritage and cultural development of the city or the area. Okay, so again, that's the Historical Landmark Commission's recommendations to determine that it's not eligible and is compatible in design. So just a few things together, thoughts again, general plans consistency, and they've done 2 community outreach, 2 Historical Landmark Commissions with the support of the Historical Landmark Commission's recommendations, and also conducted the survey. So with that, staff recommend that the Planning Commissions recommend that the City Council approve the rezone from medium-density multiple dwelling R3-3060 to Plan Development PD for the 3 detached single-family dwellings on this project site. That concludes staff presentations. The applicant and the architect is here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, so far I have one light for questions. Commissioner Casey.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Quick question. So there's no request to subdivide the.
Yes,
So
it is part of the request, but the Planning Commission does not review tentative parcel map. It goes to City Council.
Oh,
Yeah,
only.
only.
But the plan is to sell individual homes.
Right.
What are the FAR and lot coverage?
Get back to you on that real quick.
It was kind of hard to see what the setbacks are. I mean, in the drawings that was in my package. So.
Yeah, I can go back to that site plan. Here.
Yeah.
So the setback for the detached garage, that's relatively small because in order to put that into the rear there and fit the 2-car, it has about 1.5 feet setback from that property line. That is the west property line. It borders a parallel parking and driveways for that multifamily residential apartment. I can show you from the. So that apartment is on the left side there of the project site.
So what's the different distance between the back of the house to the back lot line?
They have 15, actually about 20 feet setback from the house to that side, the west property line.
And the front to the street,
The front to the street is about 15 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I saw somewhere in a report that there was possibly $411,000 worth of termite damage. Is that correct?
100, can you repeat that?
There was $411,000 worth of termite damage.
Oh, right, that's from the survey that the applicant produced, just to say that it costs more to retain the properties, or the structures on the property. Yes, that's one of the applicant's report.
I was just confirming that, yeah. Okay, would the applicant like to present? You have 10 minutes.
Hi, I'm Greg Masalam. Good evening. I don't really have much to add. The staff had a pretty thorough report, and we worked with them on the layout, worked with a few of the council members that we met on site on the design. So I'm here if you have any questions. I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Okay, I have a question. This is in the old quad, so we're trying to retain sort of the look, the historic look of the old quad. Did you retain an architect who will really try to capture some of the flavor of historic Victorian style houses?
The architect is here, but the corner house, Unit 1, we tried to mimic the best we could the house that's there now that we're removing. So we matched the style of siding and that, and then we did try to do 3 different styles of siding, a kind of a contemporary craftsman, a traditional home, and then that sort of older farmhouse that was there on the corner. And Councilman Mahan and another councilman requested that we had detached garages placed in the back there to kind of mimic those older neighborhoods. So we obliged them with that, and I think it fits in nicely in the neighborhood.
Very good. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Would any member of the public like to speak on this item?
Hi, good evening. My name's Yehoy Lee. I'm actually the homeowner of 1449 Madison Street, directly across from where the project's going to be done. I see you guys here have meeting notes from the last HLC meeting. Hopefully you've gone over them because I expressed many concerns during that meeting. Hopefully they were all noted down. It's my understanding that they are. So I know I don't have that much time, but there are a lot of things I'd like to reiterate within the short amount of time, so please bear with me if I do go fast. But as a homeowner of that property since 2009, I've had to experience 2 large construction projects, Presidio and Madison Place. We lived there for 5 years, experiencing four of those years experiencing the construction of Presidio. And then shortly after we moved out, we kept the property, we rented it out. Soon after, Madison Place started. So we've experienced probably about 8 years, almost just about 8 years worth of construction that my family has had to go through and my tenants have had to go through. And we've barely had 1 year of construction-free living for both my tenants and myself. So during that time, a lot of damages have happened. None of it was taken care of by Silicon Sage. I've spoken with them many times. We had tenants' car that had concrete poured on them. I had my tires replaced like 6 times due to nails left on the floor. Workers basically being inconsiderate. I have plenty of photos, logs, dates, pictures, times of their workers basically sitting in front of our yard, leaving their lunch over there. They had a food truck parked directly in front of our house, huge oil stains that are still there on the concrete, dust that's still, construction dust that's still on the side of our homes, still not taken care of. We're told that they were gonna come by and power wash. They never did, come by to clean the sides of the house. Nothing ever happened. Okay, they were gonna redo our trees along the side of the fence, never did. Gonna replace the fence on the side, never did. List goes on, nothing's ever been done. I understand this is gonna be a smaller scope of project. I know it's gonna happen. I'm not trying to block it in any way. I finally heard from Greg yesterday. He finally emailed me after almost 2 months just to reach out, setting up a dedicated line to express any concerns. To me, that's great. I'm glad that something has started. Unfortunately, I think that's very minimal at this point. Would have liked it if you had reached out to me sooner, but I understand. I appreciate you reaching out initially. It's great. At least something has started. However, my concern is when the project starts. I don't care how many people are on the property. I've been told many promises before. They've all been broken. Doesn't matter the size of the scope of the project. I don't need people sitting in front disturbing my tenants. My tenants are already upset. It's a perfect house for them because one of their sons has special needs and the school that he goes to is nearby, walking distance for them. It's very convenient for them. They don't want to have to reroute themselves, but they also are very pained that they got this announcement just last week and they were extremely upset to know that construction was happening again.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
I have plenty more to say, but I know my time's out.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Since I don't see anyone else, I'm going to give you 2 more minutes.
I appreciate that. So my real concern is just making sure when construction starts, that things are properly taken care of, meaning A, street sweeping is done, meaning B, proper security measures are up. We had plenty of packages stolen off because people were going onto the construction sites trying to steal tools, trying to steal materials, and they decided, oh, look at the homes nearby, let's go ahead and check them out, right? My tenants there are currently have plenty of friends in law enforcement down the street at the police department, right? They've asked for extra security, extra drive-bys to come by when construction was happening, right? I anticipate them doing that again, right? But who's going to control the dust during when construction starts? You can't control the wind, and the wind blows south all the time. I should know. It's been 8 years. So who's going to take care of that when that happens? They have 4 cars that are outside, constantly get dust on them. Nobody took care of their car washes or anything like that. End of the day, I am terrified as a homeowner that the construction will scare them off, and during that time, it may scare off other future tenants as well. So at the end of the day, this project makes them money, but costs me money. Okay, end of the day, that's what it boils down to, right? But I want to make sure that while my tenants are currently comfortable, that they can remain comfortable during another inconvenient time, right? I've already had to lower my rent by almost $6,000 a year due to the construction. I was getting about $4,200, then I had to go down to $3,700. Now I'm down to $3,500 a month. If I need to encourage them to stay because they're great tenants, what's that going to cost me to get them to stay? How can I convince them to stay outside of lowering their rent? I can't make any other concessions for them outside of that. So I just need to make sure, and I'm sure we'll talk with Greg more, but I want to make sure it's all on record that, hey, make sure all these concessions are done. Make sure these are taken care of. I can't afford to have things, broken promises affect my tenants. One request, my last request that my tenants asked for was to make sure that when the construction happens, right, they don't want any cars parked, any construction vehicles or anything parked in front of the home. I'm not sure if there's a way to do a temporary parking strictly for the home or not during the time of the construction, but that's one request that they had asked.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the public? No. Yes, would you like to rebut his comments?
I don't really have, much to say. It's, those are very large projects with, 50, 60 workers on site. You could even see from staff's photos, it was like tough to take photos when they were working there because there were so many cars. But it's inconvenient to live by a construction site, but you do your best. The city has best practices. They come out. I'm currently building on Warburton. They come and inspect the site and debris, and you try to be a good neighbor and do the best you can. And it's inconvenient, but it's sort of an inconvenient reality. So you just try to keep your site clean and be courteous to the neighbors. That's all I can do.
Do you have any idea how many workers you're going to have building this?
We're much smaller in scale. Like our largest days are probably 8 to 10 guys on site, people on site. I know parking's bad in the neighborhood already, and we try to do our best to clean this, keep the street clean, and keep everyone in order. It's difficult for everybody.
I have a question before he disappears. Have you considered an architectural site plan that involved access to the garages through a rear entrance or a shared entrance with the adjacent multifamily?
One, that's a little difficult with easements and those things, but that property is also a higher grade than our property by about 18 inches, so it'd be very tough.
Commissioner Casey.
Okay. I'm a landlord too, so I'm very sympathetic to the neighbor's complaint because this is materially affecting him. Do you have like a phone line where the tenants or your neighbor can reach immediately?
After speaking with Steve, I established like one line that people can call and we'll get emails directly, so I could respond and make sure everything's in order.
Okay, so are you willing to give him like a schedule so that he knows, he and his tenants will know what to expect in terms of how long is the project gonna take and when the major stuff is gonna happen?
Schedules are fluid, but I did tell him that I would reach out and let him know with plenty of time before we were going to get started.
Okay. And so are you willing to work with the tenant on issues like, the dust and the cars and the nails and all the things that are going to affect his tenants?
I'm happy to work with all our neighbors, but there's certain things happen, and they have to just call me and let me know. And I mean, there is dust, there is nails, but it's not, our 3 houses isn't like 2 massive buildings. The amount of congestion and, people sitting and lunch trucks, we don't get that kind of traffic for our project.
Okay, thank you. So is the city following up? Is this something that the city gets involved, or it's like
Yes, absolutely. And the gentleman that spoke, I was not aware of any of I had not heard anything. Now, I'm not saying someone else at the city hasn't been involved, but normally, I mean, our course of action, and we direct people to contact the city. And in fact, we have today, between yesterday and today, we've had like about half a dozen phone calls on another project, mediating between neighbors and trying to adjust some of the conditions. And we're looking at, in the future, to limit the construction hours near residential so that we're not having so much disturbance. So we're looking at that and modifying our conditions. Definitely, this is a much smaller project, but the ones we're talking about are the larger ones. So, but we actively are engaged with the neighbors, but I have never heard of the comments. And normally, we don't want the homeowners just to work with contact the developers exclusively, because we want to understand what's going on, and it's up to us to implement the mitigation monitoring reporting program and the conditions of approval for how construction has to be conducted, the cleanliness of the street, all the, there's dust monitoring, there's noise, all the construction hours, everything, and just the site. Usually, if things get dirty, we ask them to increase the use of a street sweeper. There's all kinds of measures that could be watering the site.
Those are all part of the conditions of approval.
Yes, but somebody does have to watch, and so usually the project manager is responsible. I know I have done this routinely on many projects, really actively involved. So we just have to hear from the community, and then we could work with them in addition to the developer. And I have personally shut down construction sites multiple times when they're not adhering to certain conditions. So it does happen. But we need to hear from the public so we can attend to those things.
So I like to ask, the neighbor. If there's a packet associated with this project proposal, and if you go into towards the end of that packet, you see all the conditions that the developer has to adhere to, that Ms. Ciara just articulated. So I recommend reading that and make sure that, if the developer is not following, then, what they're supposed to do. So that's the first thing. And to find out which part, where in the city you can contact and, get some of the issues, if you encounter any issues, to get them followed up. Yeah. Yeah, well, no, wait,
You can respond to her comment, yes. Go ahead.
To both of you, I did reach out many times to Andre Ustinov, who I guess is no longer part of the council or part of the city right now. But during that time, I reached out multiple times to him to talk to Sanjeev of Silicon Sage, to talk to Gina Force of Silicon Sage, names I'm sure you guys are familiar with. Nothing was ever done. So just letting you know, I did take the proper steps to go out there and do it. And it wasn't until we had to get legal action of the local PD involved to basically say, hey, you got to move this truck. You got to move.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
you can always call our office and we can discuss with you any outstanding issues. But that is basically a project enforcement. It's an entitlement enforcement action, and it's code enforcement. So we have different avenues that I don't know that he necessarily exercised, but we can certainly assist him at this point going forward if there's anything unresolved.
Okay.
Also, you have a new council member elected just from your district, so, you can also contact your council member. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, my computer, this iPad has issues. It keeps going to sleep, so please use your lights.
I just want to, do you want to close the public hearing at this point and then have discussion, and then you can ask?
Oh, yeah. A motion to close public
I
hearing.
move to close public hearing.
Moved by Commissioner Saul-Lam, seconded by Commissioner Kelly. All in favor? Aye.
If I may, just provide the response to Commissioner Casey. Questions on lot coverage and FAR. It's about 0.44 FAR, and lot coverage is about 48 to 49% lot coverage.
So 0.44 in each of the parcel and 48 to 49% on each of the parcel.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Becker.
So I have a couple questions. What is the timeline for the construction of how long this is supposed to take, month-wise? I wouldn't suspect it would take like 8 months or something, probably just more like 3 or 4 months, would you say?
I would leave that question to the applicant to respond.
Other things are, well, coming down to nails in the tires, that is something I heard about in a lot of those neighborhoods consistently. I've dealt with it in my neighborhoods too with construction, so that is a recommendation I really want to see is more street cleaning. This is, I think, a major issue among a lot of people here, especially in that corridor with all the construction that's been going on for the last 8 years. At the same time, the question I have is about rental. Is it rentals or is it home ownership? Are you going to be able to purchase these?
Yeah, these are owner occupied, so they'll be on individual lots and sold individually.
Okay, so cool. Okay, good. And coming down to trees, I know there's supposed to be trees on the street. On the street part, are there going to be any trees in the actual residence? Are those the actual trees or are they just bushes? I can't really see it on here.
Currently, on the Madison Street there, on the bottom left, you see 3 trees, consecutive 3 trees. Those are existings. And on the Lewis side, on the left side there, 2, those are also existing. The 2 on the right on Madison, those are proposed street trees. On-site is minimal. Landscape is really on the rear there. And those are probably not trees, just shrub, the smaller circles.
Okay. And going back to the timeline for construction, is the applicant able to answer my question?
Fortunately, nothing takes 3 or 4 months, but it's probably closer to 8 months in that time.
8 months. Okay.
But there's 3 houses, there's public improvements, it's
Okay. So with that, I mean, my major recommendation would just be the major street cleanings to eliminate a lot of nail problems. And I know experiencing how expensive, I mean, the tire industry must be really happy right now with what's going on because they're getting a lot of money out of us. So, but yes, I would approve all with this, including the nails, cleaning the street cleaning.
So this is going to be PD, right? So if the new homeowners want to convert the garages into like an ADU, they're not going to be allowed to?
Correct.
Okay. They'll have to come to us if they have to want to do that. Right. What is the setback between the garage and the back property line? Is it like 5 foot, like so
Yes,
that you can build the ADU if they really want to?
5 to 6 feet separations from the main house.
Okay.
Just double check.
Okay, got
That's
it. Thank you.
5'10", 5 feet and 10 inches.
Got it. Thank you very much.
What is typically done when we have these, I mean, is it common? I know when Kaiser was building their big parking lot and facility, the swim club that I belong to, Kaiser paid for like pool cleanings and things because we have a pool there. Do contractors or developers pay for like car washings and extra sweeping? They pay the city for that, or they have their own sweepers?
No, they actually have to hire basically a company that would come in and provide that services. So it could be, depending upon the level of construction and what type of work is being done, it could be when you're site grading, and then there's other stages of the construction. It would depend upon what's being done. So there'll be a certain course of action. Usually the staff, I mean, I know I do personally go out there and check out the site conditions and the street, what it looks like, and having them adjust the schedule basically in the frequency of the street cleaning. It just depends upon, like I said, the project, the scale of the project, and what activity in the construction schedule is happening. So framing, there's less, usually the streets are in on a bigger project, there's not a lot of dirt that's coming off the site. That usually has to do with the site, the preliminary grading, and then the finished grading. Putting in utilities, there's a lot of dirt, but we also have requirements for what's called like drain rock to be put at the entrances. We have to have what's called rattle racks. These are like metal screens that the trucks go over, so it takes as much dirt off as possible, because there's stormwater implications for when soil gets into the street and the sediments getting into the storm drain. So we have all these requirements. There's wattle put around the sites. There's a state level permit, and then there's the local permit. So there's a lot of controls, but of course dirt gets off site. So we do have that street sweeping, and again, it depends upon, you know, the site, but it should be actively managed to determine if it's effective or not.
Is there any way to write that into some sort of condition that during
Yes.
grading they pay for 3 extra street cleanings or something like that?
Well, it's really needed during the dry season, because the dirt gets swept away. I mean, actually, the rain clears it off, which, you know, is good and bad. But the main thing is not letting the soil get out into the street, and that's accomplished by putting drain rock at the driveway entrances. And then they also have an approved construction route for like moving trucks off. There's a route that has to be approved, so that we limit the path of travel and where it goes. So there's a number of things that are in place before the construction can start. So, but in this case, because it's so close to residential and there's limited paths to travel, probably a lot of the dirt's coming from the personal vehicles, not necessarily the construction traffic. I've seen some of the vehicles and have been in that area recently. So it just depends on, like, if they're parking on site, the workers, and then they're tracking the dirt off, it may not be as effective. Those things are mainly meant for the heavy truck movement, hauling dirt in or offloading it off-site. But yes, we can put in a schedule to require street sweeping, and then increase frequency as directed by staff, actively manage that.
And that would be triggered by the neighbors complaining that the streets are dirty?
No, that should be something that the project manager, in this case it would be Steve, would be checking the site, seeing how things are going, and responding to complaints. But we should be looking at the site whether or not the conditions for on-site construction are being, you know, if the site's being kept clean, and they should be sweeping up and cleaning up on a daily basis. They should not be leaving dirt tracks or anything like that out there.
Is that a condition we can add?
Yeah, you can add that condition. Because this didn't have an environmental review because it was under 4 units, so it's basically an exempt from CEQA. But there are controls in terms of what a building inspector would see and what we would expect from the site conditions for normal construction activities. So we can ask for street sweeping. It's probably more effective. I mean, it's usually built into the dust control measures that's in the mitigation monitoring reporting program for larger projects. But in this case, we could still ask for it on a small project.
I have a question for the homeowner nearby. did you collect petitions, I mean, from your other neighbors that they were affected by the same condition, or were you unduly affected by this construction? If you could come to the microphone.
I didn't petition because we've had a lot of, the neighbor directly next to me has actually changed twice. So they really haven't felt the impact behind it. And due to the way the driveways are situated on that section of Madison, I'm basically the only home that's truly affected as a homeowner.
Parking and all of the other nails and everything?
For nails, my tenants have had it.
But
And
none of your neighbors had nails?
I never asked because
Okay.
it was just strictly, I mean, sorry, I have to shell out $1,200 to $2,000 for tires every single time. So, it was pretty frustrating for me. And it always happened to be when I went over to pick up a check or something, and that's really the only, as I retraced my steps during the day, that's the only site I go to that had construction nearby.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a question for the applicant. Would you be amenable to paying for some car washing of the cars that are affected by the dust?
It's not that big of a project. It just doesn't create that much dust. I mean, it's kind of unfair that I have to suffer because they suffered previously. I mean, next thing you know, I'll have like a lineup on Fridays and I'll be taking everyone to the car wash. I mean, you try to be a good neighbor. If someone affects someone and they can contact me and Steve and, we can take care of them individually, but it's not fair to like blanket me with conditions that really shouldn't apply to a small project. It's not even close to the size of those developments.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
And Chair Jay, just to let you know that a lot of the developers do provide those amenities to the adjacent neighbors. So, I mean, we've had that on several projects where while it was not a condition, because it really is kind of, it may not be a reasonable thing to ask up front without anticipation, but usually the developers, and I know that both Prometheus and DR Horton provided numerous amenities like that. So gym memberships so that they could go offsite, movie passes. We had regular meetings. Those were very large projects, so those were like approaching 800 units. And car washes, they actually, there was some damage from the construction, and they actually did repair. There was a settlement that they repaired the damage in the homes. We changed out, there was a new masonry wall installed. We had new electrical panels that they paid for because of undergrounding the utilities. So there were concessions that were agreed upon, and usually that's prior to the entitlement. But again, those are on larger projects, so we would certainly, it's something to consider going forward for these other larger projects when you see them.
I see. I see some more lights, lots of lights here. Commissioner Becker?
Is there going to, I guess for the developer, the applicant, no weekend work, and construction times are what times, between 8 till 5 or 6?
They are 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. So if that's an issue, we're actually dealing with this on another project where it would have been better that we restricted the time to 8 a.m. And there is some built-in measures that if there's a disturbance, we can potentially adjust that, and we're looking into that for another project. But yes, we'd have to, on a case-by-case basis, have to evaluate whether or not the start times would need to be, can be adjusted. And that would require approval by City Council. If you want to make a recommendation for this or another project, you certainly can, and we're going to evaluate that from the staff standpoint too, to better address the interface with existing residential.
Okay, and No weekend, you said no weekend work?
Weekends, they can. I think the start time is 8 o'clock, and
It's 7 to 6. Like you said.
no, on
Oh,
Saturdays?
Saturday is 9 to 6.
Okay, Saturday is 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay.
And we have another residential project, but it's 52 units. That one cannot have outdoor work on Saturdays, but that was for a specific project because it is near residential. So that was, we don't normally do that, but we're starting to approach that differently. So that previous project, Catalina, had that provision in there.
Okay, Commissioner Kelly.
Quick question. Obviously, we require things like this straw netting to be put around to prevent, runoff, and then we have spray down to keep the dust down. How often does the city send somebody out there just to check to make sure the builder is taking care of those things?
Well, there's inspections that are called for each phase of the development, but it just depends actually, it's each project manager should be taking a look at the property. But a lot of it is really dependent upon the developers to do. So that's why there has to be more involvement from the staff, the project managers, to make sure that their sites are the conditions of approval are being adhered to. So, there's kind of a flexible period from the time they pull the building permit and they start grading. They're kind of on their own. So I think that's why we're seeing is it has to be actively managed. But there isn't any requirement for anyone to inspect, and that's outside of the building inspector as they go there and making sure that they see that the site's being worked on in accordance with the conditions for the building permit.
And if the neighbor complains there's dust coming over, you just contact the
It would be the
project
planning.
manager?
It would be the planning department. So it would be code enforcement, and then code enforcement usually works with the planning staff to make sure we understand the conditions. But there is standard dust control, so it is wetting down the sites. Sometimes when they leave a lot of the soil fallow, we've had them put tackifiers on and do basically erosion control. So it's plant material that gets sprayed on if it's going to be left untouched for a while. So because we get southwest winds and it blows a lot of dirt and dust. So it just depends on, like I said, on the size, the location of the site, and how long the phasing takes place.
But if the homeowner does contact,
They can just call code enforcement, and code enforcement is in our department. We would work with them to make sure that the conditions are being implemented.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Salem.
All right, so I have a couple questions. Is the site plan considered final, or is this a proposal only at this point? Will it go to architecture committee?
The proposal is as such today. I mean, if there's no changes proposed from the applicant, but if there's anything changes from now or the city council, this project will go to architectural review committee for final architectural approval.
Yeah, I just saw a couple of optimizations that could reduce the amount of hardscape devoted to driveways, and I was hoping there'd be an opportunity to suggest it. Also, are the old growth trees going to remain?
The existing trees?
Yes.
All of them on the streets are to remain.
Okay, yes. So those are going to provide a natural barrier for dust migration and debris. So hopefully that can help, and the majority of the demolition dust and things won't make it across the street. Okay, I'll wait for architecture committee to talk about the other things. Thanks.
Commissioner Kesey.
So this will go to the council either way. Approximately when, you think, maybe?
Yes, it's anticipated, tentatively scheduled for January 29th.
Oh, thank you. So I would like to recommend the neighbor to make sure you be at that council meeting. And maybe that's a great time to air some of the issues you've had in the past, because the council is concerned about the city's responsiveness to the residents. So I would really recommend being there. You will have two opportunities to speak, one during the public presentation, to speak on any matters that's not on the agenda, and then there will be an opportunity for you to talk when this project comes up. And to speak as a member of the public, you don't even need to wait until the end of January. You can go to, well, I don't know, I don't know when the next council meeting is, but you can take that earliest opportunity to speak up. Yeah.
I had a question for the applicant. Are you providing wiring for EV chargers in the garages? It's a code requirement now?
It is in Cal Green. They have to be pre-wired
Yeah,
only.
yeah,
It does
yeah.
not have to have the actual
Oh,
facility.
because I didn't
But
see it
yes,
under conditions, but,
well, because it's under the building code, so it doesn't
Oh,
need to be
okay.
enumerated in the conditions. But for all new construction, single family and multifamily, it has to have the pre-wiring.
okay. I think we're ready to make a motion. Can you help us word the condition for
The street
site
sweeping?
visits and, yeah, street treatment? Yeah.
And what else?
And the visits from the staff to
Oh.
the site? Yeah.
Okay. So for the street sweeping, we can add a condition that says that the developer shall provide street sweeping on a regular basis to maintain the site in a clean and orderly condition. That, we can have that. And then for the, I'm sorry, what was the other condition?
Well, there was one about car washing, but I think that this project is much smaller than the other ones, but, you know, we could put something in.
We can have a condition that says that in the event that, you know, there are complaints about the construction activity or maintenance of the site and surrounding environs, that they will contact code enforcement and put the number in the condition. So anyone who pulls the approval can see the contact number for that. So we can add that, but you said for the regular review of the site condition.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just say that, yeah, that site will be regularly monitored by city staff to ensure adherence to best practices for construction and site maintenance.
That's not a condition for approval. Is that a recommendation to council that we do that, or?
Well, you can add that condition and we can write that in.
That's
and
a
we could-
condition
we
for the
can-
city, not the applicant, right?
Well, but we want the applicant shall adhere to all best practices related to, I think that actually is a condition.
Maybe you want to see condition C13, and maybe gives you an idea to add on any language you want to that. Basically, C13 requires developer is responsible for collections and pickup of all trash and debris on site and adjacent public right of way.
Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily pertain to dust.
Sweeping.
So,
Yeah,
so
street
I think
sweeping.
what we could do is just say that the site shall be monitored both the site will be monitored by city staff, and in the event that additional measures are needed to maintain the property and the surrounding environment, that city staff will work with the developer to implement additional site control measures.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the city council approve the rezone from medium-density multiple dwelling to planned development for the development of 3 detached single-family dwellings on the property located at 1444 Madison Street. Just on the Madison Street, not on the other?
No,
It's the
1444 Madison Street and 1411 Lewis Street.
1411 Lewis Street.
Yeah.
With the additional requirements that the applicant or the applicant periodically sweep the streets to maintain good conditions, and that the site be monitored by both the applicant and the city staff, who will contact the developer to work out the solution if the conditions are not being met, and that the contact information for code enforcement be made available to be included in the conditions, and that the contact information for the applicant be also included in the conditions so that the neighbors can contact the applicant if necessary.
Second.
Okay,
I think I got that. Is that?
Okay, because I was like, otherwise we can just, yeah, do three quick bullet points.
I have a condition of approval to require, well, this is my take on it, to require additional street cleaning as required by the city's project manager and work with the city, and the applicant will work with the city to implement additional site cleaning measures if conditions are not being met, and that the code enforcement and applicant's contact information be included in the conditions of approval.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
okay. Motion by, yes, very good. Okay, we'll have to go to a voice vote. Are you going to pull it up here first, or is it up? Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. There's no appeals for this, right, because it goes to council?
It's just a recommendation, yeah, so
that's
it'll
right.
go to city council.
Okay. On to, we now have a report from the reports for commission and board liaison and committee assignments. So I want to remind the Planning Commission that we need to elect a vice chair to fill the term vacated by Commissioner Raj Chahal, who was elected to City Council and resigned from the Planning Commission. So nominations may occur tonight or at the next Planning Commission meeting on the 19th.
We have our new planning commissioner by then?
I doubt it.
No, I don't think so. And it just in general practice, the positions rotate, and so they tended to go in order of, I guess, appointment. So the new commissioner may not be, yeah. So yeah, it usually rotates through.
It's generally by seniority is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm not sure if it was a little bit different for the appointment of Commissioner Becker as secretary. I wasn't sure, or because the other commissioners had a term, but it can, you don't have to adhere to that. It just is up to the commission.
Well,
Will be Commissioner Salem.
we can take nominations tonight. Anyone interested in the position?
I'll nominate Commissioner Becker.
Okay. Well, we have, I believe, 2 people that are interested.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, Chair Jane, I'm just concerned that this isn't on the agenda, and
Okay.
I'm not sure if we're planning on taking a vote, but I recommend doing it
We're
at the next meeting.
We can do nominations, right? But we're not
Okay.
going to vote. We can do nominations, but we
Yes,
can't vote.
right.
Yes. Okay. So that's all we have. And I want to remind you that voting is will be done in public.
We will agendize it for the next
Yeah, we'll
meeting.
agendize it.
Mhm. So
All
I'm
right.
sorry, are there 2 nominations then, or
I
there's
believe
just
there
the?
are 2 nominations.
Okay,
Okay,
and that's for vice chair,
for vice chair.
for vice chair, okay.
Okay, board or committee assignments. Reports, architectural committee, any reports? Travel? Are there any upcoming trainings for new commissioners, APA type trainings? I guess I wanted to ask, do you now have an APA account and you're getting notices about APA conferences and things?
Honestly, I do not know.
Okay.
So we can follow up with that and make
Yeah.
sure that Commissioner Williams receives all the notifications from APA.
Yes. There are a number of trainings coming up, so.
So there's the California Planning Association training. Oh, no, that's gonna be next fall. So APA is in San Francisco next spring?
I think so.
There's a League of City, right? League of City conference. So maybe that's a great opportunity for the new commissioners to consider attending. I attended it and it was very informative. So, we have new commissioners who might benefit from because the APA is not going to be for half a year.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have thoroughly enjoyed those conferences.
Yeah, okay.
If I'm not signed up or whatever he asked me about getting
Yeah.
the information,
American Planning Association.
yeah, I'm not at all. I just got email and then Granicus.
Okay.
The other thing that I want to remind commissioners are that the city has a subscription to the Silicon Valley Business Journal.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of very good information about projects that are coming up in Silicon Valley, so.
We'll make sure and send Commissioner Williams the link. Does anyone else need that? Because there is a group membership.
Yeah, does everyone have access to the Silicon Valley Business Journal? We have a free membership, I mean,
Okay.
as part of the city.
All right, so
I use mine.
Yeah, I use mine regularly, yeah. Okay.
Okay, we'll make sure that we'll get, does anyone else not have access, Commissioner
I
Salim?
haven't tried, but I'd like access.
Okay, we'll give you the contact information, send it via email.
I get emails like every day from them, so I'm wondering if that's because I have the access, or is that
We'll
a
confirm.
separate issue?
Yeah, we should confirm that to
Okay.
make sure that you have the account. There may be an account code, I'm not quite sure.
I get emails almost every day from the
Okay.
Business Journal, yeah, so.
So, yeah, if you can just check your email, if you can access the full site, that means you are already registered, but if not, we can confirm.
Okay, report from the Director of Community Development.
Okay, so just, I'm not sure if Rena has additional information, but I have a few items that were approved since your last meeting, but I gotta find it. There was an appointment of members to the Downtown Precise Plans Task Force, and I don't know if you know the members.
That's quite a big list.
Oh, okay, all
So
right.
I don't have that offhand, but we do have that listed in our staff report
Okay.
associated with the
Okay,
task force. And the first task force meeting will be on the 20th of this month at the in the city council chambers.
And the accessory dwelling unit zoning amendments that were brought to you on the last meeting on consent, those were approved by city council. So now all the multifamily zoning districts specify that the ADUs are allowed if you have a single family home or propose one in those multifamily zoning districts. And then Gateway Crossings was actually heard by city council on the 4th of December, but that was continued for further discussion. There's a number of items that the council is looking at and asked the developer to conduct some additional outreach. So there will be an outreach meeting probably in January, and this will return to council in February 5th?
February 5th.
5th, okay. And that was it. Oh, and of course, former Commissioner Raj Chahal was sworn in as our newest council member.
A couple things I just wanted to add. I wanted to remind the commission that the next Planning Commission hearing, which is on January 9th, starts at 6 p.m. And we are intending to bring forth a study session on a couple items that the attorney's office is working on that will likely also include housing legislation updates and perhaps another item, but we would start within the 6 p.m. timeframe, so no early attendance necessary, but we are starting obviously at an earlier time than we usually do, but we'll continue that time. The other item that I'll just bring to everyone's attention now, because we're aware of it, is that there will likely be a cancellation of the scheduled January 23rd Planning Commission hearing related to workflow as well as just some other considerations, but really wanting to have a full agenda for you all and not wanting you to come in for nothing. So just I know people have a lot of plans, so that's a time of year that people may want to know that they will be free. So that's a likely cancellation of that meeting that I wanted to advise you on.
And Commissioners, just to be a reminder, I'm sure you're all aware, but that starting in January, the Planning Commission will meet regularly starting at 6 p.m. So we did move up that start time, and that schedule is pending going to City Council, but that's the start time proposed.
Okay, so for all meetings, it'll start at 6
Yes, all meetings will start at 6 p.m.
I believe there is a El Camino Real community meeting this Thursday. Is that correct?
Correct. 2 items for El Camino Real on Thursday. There is a community meeting specifically to discuss some lane configuration options that would remove street parking along El Camino Real and to get precise feedback from those affected properties. And that meeting is, if I could tell you the location.
The Redwood Room at the Central Library from 6 to 8 p.m.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Suds, or Chair Jane. And then there's also a Citizen Advisory Committee meeting on Monday, the 17th, which is a public meeting for a discussion of sort of feedback from the December 13th community meeting, as well as a presentation by staff on land use alternatives for the specific plan.
And that CAC meeting will be Monday, December 17th at the City Hall cafeteria from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m.
Thank you.
Okay, I just looked up the League of Cities, and they're going to have a Planning Commission Academy from March 6th through March 8th in Long Beach. So if you can make yourself available, if you're a new commissioner, that would be great.
Okay.
I attended it, and it was very good. Any idea when we're gonna be like filling vacancy?
That's with the Office of the City Clerk, so we're waiting to hear back from them to schedule. They actually needed the resignation of Commissioner Chahal or Councilmember Chahal now before they could actually start the advertisement period. So it's in process right now.
Got it, thank you.
Is there a budget report?
No, we just bring that once a month. So you have that at your last meeting. Well, I mean, it hasn't changed.
I think you already covered upcoming commission items, agenda items. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Adjourned. Thank you very much.